Gone. We're live. Okay, so this is Vance Stevens in Barcelona, of all places to be, Barcelona, Spain, sitting here with Chris Fry, and we're sitting at the British Council here in where Chris works. This is July 13th, a Monday, unusually, but we still have a good turnout here for a Learning Together event. So Chris is going to tell us about his research on students doing story recording, digital story recording. And before we get started, let's say hi to Chris. First of all, we just had a great lunch, by the way. Very nice. Yeah. And so this is Chris here. Bobby is over taking, she's there on the iPad. I think we got Bobby there. I can't see it. Okay, that's Bobby. All right, Bobby's got an iPad. If the Hangout gets full, Bobby will be the first to leave. So right now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 places taken. There are 3 more places. If anybody's listening on the stream, but nobody is, it tells us how many viewers we have on the stream. So everyone that we have here is with us in the Hangout. Is everybody able to hear okay? Maybe a thumbs up. You can unmute your mics for a moment and say who you are. So who have we got with us in the chat here? It's Rita's first, okay?
Hello, Vance. Hello, Chris. Hola, Chris. Un gusto verte. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you all, as usual. And yes, Chris, so long. Haven't you seen you so long? So I'm going to share you today and enjoy the talk. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Rita. Rita's in Argentina. I don't know if you mentioned that. Rosario, I presume. Next, who do we have next up? Untangling my headset as we're doing this.
I'll say hello. This is Robert in the Philippines.
Hi, Robert, in the Philippines, in Mindanao, I believe. And Sabrina, oh, your mic just went off and back on again. Your mute just went off and back on. Are you going to say hi?
Can you hear me now? There we go.
Yep, we can.
Hello. I am Sabrina, and I am 2 hosts ago to Bobby and Vance down in Altafulla, about an hour down the coast from you guys now in Barcelona.
Yeah, we were just staying with Sabrina and Gary and Dude, the all-important Dude. Okay, so anyway, nice to have been with you there in Altafulla. It was a really nice time. And Benjamin in Aguascalientes, how are you?
Hello everyone. Ben Stewart here in Aguascalientes. Happy to be here and look forward to the talk.
Okay, cool. Speaking of which, I guess Chris is going to show us. He's got a screen share here. What will happen? Let's see. He's got his slides on screen share. He has a problem with the microphone, so he's going to be speaking through this mic, this one right here, and we're going to play the student sound on his tablet device. His Samsung doesn't look like a telephone, but
yeah, it's
little.
It's like a very big phone.
It's like a large phone or a very tiny computer, whichever you prefer. Okay, so Chris, over to you. Yeah, let me find my mouse here. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's visible, isn't it?
There you go.
Okay. I started off with some statistics because I think they're quite impressive. This
statistics of what? What are you doing exactly?
My students recorded themselves 2,756 times during this academic year, which is, yeah, wow! It's a very big number. So about 3 recordings per day of class. I've got the statistics for the previous year, and it's about twice as much in this year. So I was very pleased about that. Now, how can I get my...
Everybody hear Chris okay?
Let's see if we're going to get... Okay, there we are.
Hi to Maria, who's also joined us. And I'm sure that's going to mute in just a moment because we're picking up for echo.
So 3 recordings per day.
Hearing Chris repeat himself. Maria? I'll mute Maria just really quickly there. Okay, she's done it. She's already done it. Okay.
Okay. So, what I want to talk about today is what do the students record? And there are a few things there. How do they record themselves? And then what can the students do with their recordings? And what can the teacher do with these recordings? So, what do they record? Well, retelling stories, which is the title of this Learning Together. And to my mind, it is the most important one. Typically, students listen to a story a number of times and then retell the story to another student who's never seen or listened to the story. So there is real communication going on there. The second thing is interviewing students. Although they work in pairs, and the person who records themselves is the person who's being interviewed, because the person who's doing the interview has got a list of questions which they just read out. Then the last 3 things are rather different because they're practicing forms, they're not really communication. So practicing pronunciation, doing grammar and vocabulary exercises and recording it, which is kind of a new thing for me, and reading aloud, which overlaps a lot with practicing pronunciation. So here's an example of the sort of thing that my students might be asked to do. So
1.50.
They would listen to something like this. It's taken from English File, 3rd edition, pre-intermediate.
Happy ending. Suddenly, a man ran across the road. He was wearing a dark coat, so Hannah didn't see him at first. Quickly, she put her foot on the brake. She stopped just in time. She got out of her car and shouted at the man.
Don't you usually look before you cross the road? I nearly hit you. I didn't see you until the last moment.
Sorry. Hey, Hannah, it's me. It's Jamie.
Jamie, what are you doing here? I nearly killed you.
I was buying something. I was in a hurry and I crossed the road without looking.
Come on, get in.
Hannah and Jamie drove to the coffee bar.
That's probably enough to give the idea of that. So the students would listen to this 2 or 3 times, particularly at the beginning of the course when I try to make it a bit easier for them. And I always suggest that when they're listening to it, the first time they just listen, don't take notes or anything, just try and follow the story. The second time they might want to take notes, and if I play it a 3rd time because I feel they need a bit of extra support, they can take more notes. And then I always play it again with the script, and then half the class who've been outside doing an exercise come back in and are paired up with the students who've heard the story, who retell the story. And I'm going to play now Carla, a very good pre-intermediate student, retelling that story.
Okay, suddenly a man ran across the road. Hannah stops just in time and she go out the car. She said that the man she didn't see, and the man said sorry, and she looks the man and is Jamie, says it's Jamie, and the man says yes, I am Jamie, and she nearly hit him, and Jamie get in the car. Okay, and they went to the coffee bar, and they ordered then a cup of coffee. And
Okay, I'll stop it there. That was the first minute of Carla's recording. Now, on the next slide, I've got the feedback that I gave Carla. I corrected 5 grammar problems, most of them to do with not using the past tense, but there were probably a few little prepositions and things as well there. And 5 problems of pronunciation, all of which involve her pronunciation of the letter R. You can see across and sorry, where the letter R really is pronounced, and car nearly, and bar where it isn't. Now, it took me 8 minutes to provide this feedback, but that included maybe listening to it 3 times and making a short recording of me reading these sentences and words. So quite a lot of time. Here you can see a picture of students in this room doing that type of exercise. I very much doubt if it was that particular exercise. You can see they're all holding their mobile phones. They're holding it with a microphone near their mouths, because that way you get a better quality of sound. The closer they hold it to their mouth, the better the quality of the sound. Now, the second type of material that I get them to record is being interviewed. This is taken from English File Intermediate, and it was a lesson which included the third conditional and a lot of things about luck. And here you can listen to Lydia G being interviewed.
yes, I consider that I am a lucky person because I made a big effort to have to arrive to my. I think when I have a challenge, an objective, I consider that I need to work very hard. And normally, if you work very hard, you achieve this challenge or your thing or one thing.
Okay, I stopped after a minute of that as well. Okay, so there's 2 types of communicative recording which I get my students to do in class. Now, I can't possibly listen to all my students' recordings. This one I only listened to preparing this talk. I'd never listened to it before. This is practicing form, and it's an example from pre-intermediate in English File. And here, Elizabeth is repeating what I'm playing on the sound system. So let's just listen to her.
The man went up the steps and into the church. He drove out of the garage and along the street.
I ran over the bridge and across the park.
I ran over the bridge and across the park. The man went up the steps and into the church. He drove out of the garage and along the street. I ran over the bridge and across the park.
That was pretty short. And I think you could hear that the first time she was repeating what was playing through the sound system, but then she read each of the sentences again without repeating it after the model. So this is practicing grammar, vocabulary, and the pronunciation. This is a more ambitious exercise, and it's something that I tried for the first time this year, and I was really pleased with. It's a typical grammar exercise. You've got to put the tenses of the verbs in the right order. It's just mechanical. But many people do this in writing, other people do it as a whole class activity, but I get the students to do it at the same time, recording their answers. So let's listen to Jose doing that. Jose is a very good intermediate student.
Hadn't gone to the university, he wouldn't have met Farah. If you hadn't taken me to the airport, I wouldn't have missed my flight. We wouldn't have won the match if the referee hadn't given us a penalty. You wouldn't have enjoyed the weekend if you had came with us. Come with us.
That's a difficult exercise.
I think it is, and it's very impressive the way he self-corrected. He was sort of working it out as you went along. So I don't have a very big class. Maybe there were 6 students doing this at the same time, but you could easily hear what Jose was saying. And it strikes me that that's a lot more practice per person than doing it round the class or doing it in writing. And so I was very impressed with this. What I then did was to give them the answers. Maybe they would see it projected on the screen, probably with me doing what they had done. And the students always seemed to notice which ones they got wrong. And I would suggest, well, why don't you just record the ones you got wrong again, tag them on the end. I was very pleased with this. And I think the fact that I introduced this idea this year is one of the reasons why there were so many more recordings this year. The final one, I've said reading aloud. Sometimes it's reading a short paragraph aloud. In this case, halfway through the year, I decided to extract some of the feedback I gave my students about speaking, but also about writing, and share it with the whole class. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There were 6 students' recordings which I listened to, and I chose one problem from each of their recordings to share with the class. I explained why this was right and what they'd said was wrong. I modelled a pronunciation, and then I got them to record themselves reading it aloud. And let's see if we can find Dolores, a very good student at intermediate.
The taxi driver charged me $50 for the trip, sometimes even at the weekend. Do you know what a complainer is? Don't waste your time arguing with the waiter. I love buying a stationery. The first complaint he made was 20 years ago. I wrote to the company.
That's probably enough to give you an idea about that. Usually, when the students were making their recording, reading this aloud, I would also make a recording myself, reading the same thing aloud, which they would have access to. It would appear miraculously on Edmodo an hour or so later.
Your finger is over the video. There you go.
Okay. For me, the big question is, how do students record themselves? Well, in my classrooms, they use their mobile phones, or one or two people use their tablets, but it's bring your own device. It really helps to have Wi-Fi. We're very lucky, we've got pretty good Wi-Fi in all the classrooms now. And what we use is iPadio apps for Android and iPhones. So you can just look up iPadio in Google Play or iTunes. They're free apps, of course. This is roughly what they look like. The picture on the left is the sort of opening screen. You just click on audio, and I think you click one more thing, start, and you're away. Then you have to give it a name and click on upload, and with a good Wi-Fi connection, it gets there pretty quickly. I get my students to do this on the first day of the first class in my courses. Before I say my name, I give them the code for the Wi-Fi and get them to collect their phone, and then I get them to download this app. What I do is I tell them, don't send me your broadcast location. You see, under settings at the top there in the middle, it's not going to be very interesting. Pretty well everything's going to be in class or in their house. The screenshot in the middle is from my Android tablet, which hasn't got a phone. So it doesn't have things about roaming. It only has Wi-Fi as a possibility. So in the third panel, you can see what I get on my Android phone. So enable uploading when roaming? No, I don't think I really want to incur charges. And if you're teaching in foreigners, they probably don't want to use their roaming either. And upload only using Wi-Fi, you don't use up your data quota. You can actually use an old phone like this one. This is a phone that I had 5 years ago, something like that. It's got no SIM card in it, but despite the fact that it's pretty old, iPadio works, and I bring this along at the beginning of term so that if somebody hasn't got the right sort of phone or has a problem, they can just use this. Yeah. It doesn't cost anything as long as you use Wi-Fi, and you can even use a simple phone like this one. This is an ancient phone. It is limited. Yeah, feature phone. Yeah. You phone a free number, and it works really well, but only in about 15 countries of the world. But in the United States, I think it works, last time I looked anyway, and in Spain, it works. So it's a great way to record. I wrote a review of iPadio on Google Play just a couple of weeks ago. I was looking and thought, oh, I haven't evaluated this, yet I love it. So I gave it 5 stars, and I explained why I gave it 5 stars. It's very generous. You can record 60 minutes, which is more than you're going to need in a class. It's the best recording app that enables you to select individual recordings to add to your Eportfolio on WordPress or Blogger. Yeah. Some other apps will let you send everything there, but won't let you do it selectively. It's pretty easy to embed manually in Edmodo, which I use. Teachers can follow students, although personally I think this needs to get better. It's not as simple as it should be. Teachers and students can add comments to recordings, although it's a great pity that you can't add a new line. It just comes out as a stream of text. But it's still the best there is. So what can students do with their recordings? Well, I think the first thing is they've got to listen to their recordings. If they don't listen to their recordings, it's really a waste of time. Not all students do, of course. And this is something I plan to work on this coming year, trying to get them to get into the habit of listening to themselves. Maybe we'll do something in class. They could plug in their earphones and listen to themselves. Second thing is they can redo at home any recordings they're not happy with. Maybe it was too much pressure in class, they felt they didn't give a good performance, or got in a tangle because they couldn't find a word. Some students do this, but not many. And of course, they can read my comments on the recordings that I do listen to and add comments to. And I ask my students to select their best recordings for me to evaluate every week. And I ask them to add these recordings to their e-portfolios.
Can I interrupt just
a
moment?
Sure.
We have 3 viewers in the stream. We have 7 places taken in the Hangout. We have a chat wing open at chatwing.com/VANCESTEV. If you're in the stream and you want to join us in the Hangout, you can just write a note there in that chat wing, chatwing.com/VANCESTEV, and we'll make space for you, because we have 3 devices here in the Hangout. We have 7 places taken, but there should be enough for the 3 viewers. So if anybody wants to join us, just let us know, and we'll, or just join us at the direct link, and maybe I'll be able to paste that into the chat wing. Nope. Okay, anyway, but maybe someone else can do it. Maybe someone else can place the direct link to the Hangout into the chat wing. Yeah, thank you. Sabrina did that. Thanks very much, Sabrina. And welcome also to Nelly, who's just joined us, Nelly Deutsch. And who else is here that we haven't welcomed? Ji Wang has been trying to join us. She keeps popping in and out. So anyway, welcome to her. She'll hear this welcome on the recording. Okay. Over to you.
So what can the teacher do with these recordings? Well, I can tell you what I do with the recordings. I listen to some of them on my tablet or my phone, on my way to work, on public transport. I probably listen to 1 per student, or occasionally 2 per student a week. I usually select short recordings which involve pronunciation, reading aloud, because I can only write a very sort of limited amount on the train. So I put in a list of words which they haven't pronounced well and suggest that they check the pronunciation on How Do You Say, or possibly on Google Translate. When I'm writing comments writing comments is what I've just talked about. The second thing is I evaluate 1 recording a week, which each student is supposed to select and say, this is my best recording of the week, please evaluate me on this. That's the theory. In the end, I have to choose a recording myself at random just to make sure that the ball starts rolling. It's the only way to get the whole thing working quickly.
We'll try to have some time for questions later, but right now Nelly just put one in the text chat. She says, how would you encourage students to listen to themselves?
Well, I think do something in class, yeah? Maybe make your comments conditional on them having made a comment first. So, you know, I'm not going to bother to comment on your stuff unless you've listened to it and put a little comment in there saying, oh, what a pity, I pronounced since as science, and I know it's since. And then you say, okay, you've given something, I'll spend some time and listen to that recording.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's just an idea off the top of my head. But I agree, it's something I've got to work on, because if they don't listen to it, it's just, you know, put in a drawer somewhere and forgotten about.
Yeah, if you don't get the students to do something, maybe you'll make a comment that's just wasted because they're not going to read it. But if you actually have them do something to elicit the comment, then that's obviously your time is well spent.
Yeah. Maybe the idea of them asking me to comment on things as well as evaluate. They could say, listen to this one. What do you think of my pronunciation there?
Yeah, sure.
I think getting them more involved will always help.
Yeah.
Look, here are some examples of comments that I wrote, I think actually not this year, the previous year, on my way to work. No, I say, it's not typical at the end of a sentence. You know, right, you see, are more common. They're quite brief, all of these things. Yeah? Check the pronunciation of these words: Zealand, want, scenery, surrounded, that sort of thing. Remember, this is done on a train, so it's not very verbose. The second panel, you can see something which I copied and pasted into a lot of students' recordings one week. How often do you listen to your recordings? I listen to them a few times a week. Do you notice some of your mistakes? This is a bit what Nelly was suggesting, a sort of a little bit of a push to get them to listen more.
As Michael Chalk has joined us in the chat wing. Welcome to Michael. I believe that's Michael Chalk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, welcome, Michael. This is the complete version of the feedback I gave Carla. So listen once to the first minute of your recording and pause when you get to each of these grammar mistakes and take some notes. That's a sort of template that I use for giving feedback. I only listen to the first minute. Here are some pronunciation problems. Listen to my recording and repeat the grammar mistakes and the pronunciation mistakes. There should be time to repeat them. Use your mobile to record my version and yours, and then listen and compare them. I don't know how many people actually do that, but a lot of them do listen to these and send me messages, thank you. I usually include a general comment about their speaking. So your pronunciation was good, you're very fluent, a few grammar problems, one or two pronunciation problems to solve. And I always tell them how long I spent evaluating their speaking, and kind of suggest that if I spend 8 minutes doing this, maybe they should put in 8 minutes benefiting from what I did. You can see there's a link to the BBC Learning English pronunciation page about the R sound.
Michael Coughlin in the text chat.
Wow.
He's using a very strange avatar. He generally calls himself Mike Cog, so you confused me. But anyway, welcome, Michael.
Welcome indeed. Okay.
And Nellie, while I interrupted you, she asked if you considered using badges to. Oh, there we have them right here.
No. This is a different thing. I have used badges a little bit. I use them for reading. So every time they read 5 books, they get another badge, and then another badge for 10 and 15 there. But yeah, why not? On Edmodo, there is a system of giving badges, and I could try that. It's a nice idea. Okay. This is just to explain an overview of how students can add their best recordings to their ePortfolios. So if you go to myipadio.com on the web, you go to Share Media, you can set up cross-posting to a variety of different platforms, Tumblr, Twitter, Blogger, and WordPress, which is what we use. So once the students have got a WordPress blog or ePortfolio, they just click on the WordPress icon there, and they set it up by giving their username, password, etc. And once they've set it up like that, supposing they choose to add street interviews to, you just click on the share icon on the right. You can see the word cross posts under it there, and then you choose which platform to share it to. They'd probably only have WordPress, but if they had others, they could use those as well. You click on confirm, and it works. It's extremely good. Here's an example of a student Eportfolio from last year. This is retelling an episode of a video. Yeah, you can listen to any of these by clicking on the links, and you'll see the iPadio recording. I think you can't do it right now, but later we can make these slides available to you.
Yeah, I guess we'll have some show notes. You said you'd provide the links for the recordings that we listened to.
Yeah,
okay.
We can include all of that. Now, I decided at the end of the year to ask my students about certain aspects of the course. I was particularly interested in their progress in speaking and writing, which are the only things we use for evaluation at the British Council, and whether they were happy with their progress and how they could explain why they'd made such good progress or such poor progress. And this is just some extracts from what they said. So 4 people out of 7 said that recording themselves had been useful. 3 out of 6 said they would like to do that the following year with another teacher. And I include here another question, which is 4 out of 6, unprompted, said that they would like to have a class library or to use the library downstairs next year. And it was very similar with the intermediate students. So I think it confirms that students actually like recording themselves. They see the value of it. Now, at the end of each year, or at the beginning of each year, we set out objectives as teachers, and we speak to our line manager about our sort of learning plan, personal learning plan for the year. And at the end of last year, as my conclusions, I wrote down this, that I'd evaluated 169 recordings, that I'd spent about 10 minutes on each one, and I wasn't happy with this. I thought that I could probably improve it by limiting the amount of time I spent to 5 minutes, about half the time, and that would still generate half a dozen grammar points and some pronunciation points, which I thought would be, well, more than enough. A dozen grammar problems is, too much pressure. I don't think students are really going to benefit from that. So I calculate that listening to just the first minute 3 times would take 5 minutes, particularly if I record the pronunciation myself instead of setting up links for each word to how do you say. And I carried this plan out. I tested it with a few sample recordings at the beginning. These are the statistics at the end of this year. It was very disappointing with my pre-intermediate class. If you look at the last row where it says average time spent per student, I knocked it down from 8.4 minutes to 7.1 minutes, but I didn't get anywhere near 5 minutes. So still spending too long. And as I decided to do it every week instead of every 2 weeks, it meant I did more work. I haven't finished the statistics for the intermediate group, but I have done them for the first term. And if you look at the bottom line there, it's always the bottom line that counts, isn't it?
I'm not sure if, can everyone see the bottom line? I'm not sure what's showing up in their...
No. Is there anything I can do about that? Maybe...
That's okay. You just read the statistics.
There we are.
No?
No, it's still not there. Okay. I thought we've lost the screen share.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
that's okay.
Well.
We also lost the link to How'd You Say. Did anybody see the link to How'd You Say on the previous slide? We can put all this in the show notes.
Yeah. Let me just read from. I'm not sharing it now, but it's the last slide anyway.
Oh, okay.
I managed to get the time down from 9.6 minutes per student to 5.5, and that's the sort of thing that I was aiming at. So doing twice as many assessments in the same amount of time per student as I did the previous year. Well, I'll see what happened in the second term and the third term when I get time later this week to analyze it. But that will all go into my comments about my action research this year, and that's the end of the slideshow and the presentation.
Okay, Nellie. And Jim Buckingham has joined us also in the text chat, in the chat wing. Nellie asked, does Hangout not provide a chat for those who are not directly in the Hangout? That's a very good question, because that's why we're using Chatwing. It's at chatwing.com/VANCESTEV. So questions, text in the Hangout, I can only get by making screenshots. I can't even copy it and paste it anywhere. But the chat wing, I can actually record that. I can, first of all, it's there forever in the chat wing, and secondly, I can copy and paste it to the show notes. So that's and James is asked, maybe James is not in the Hangout itself. Okay, so he is. You want to read
shall I answer what James says there?
I'll ask the question for him, and you can answer it. Shall I do that?
Yeah.
Okay. He says, are there any issues with protecting student privacy? Do students ever have reservations about hosting their recordings to the general public? Perhaps you use them as a motivator to get them involved, authentic recordings. Okay.
The recordings are public. Students only on one or two occasions have ever received any comments from anybody else. iPadio is not a really popular platform with lots of people following it. So the problems of privacy, all my students are adults anyway, they do know that it is public. I've only had one student in 3 or 4 years who had any reservations about that, and his speaking was very, very poor, and I think he was embarrassed about that. I don't know what my students record is sufficiently interesting for other people to want to listen to it because of its content. I guess that's another kind of recording. It's making a podcast where your students are producing a kind of online oral magazine, and then you might try to build up interest in listening to it. I think the interest of the recordings is purely pedagogical. I think there are privacy settings. Yeah, iPadio has quite complicated privacy settings. So Sabrina, if students are worried, they can click on something which will make it very difficult for me to listen to, as well as anyone else. But that's the inconvenience of them applying privacy. Yes, students can delete them. I went back to look at past students' recordings the other day, and only one person had eliminated their account. But on the other hand, none of them had continued to record themselves the following year with a different teacher.
And Jim also asks, and by the way, my preference is that people will converse in the chat wing chat, because this is a public record and it's visible to everybody who's in the stream as well as who's in the Hangout, whereas whatever is in the Hangout is not going to be recorded. So to answer Jim's last question, He says, do the students have control over the recordings? Can they delete them afterwards?
Absolutely, yeah. They can actually edit them as well, although I've never worked on this. On the app, you can cut the beginning, the tails of recordings if they're not relevant. But I'm not trying to produce sort of perfect recordings. These are very much raw recordings. So I'm not fussy if there are a few clicks and coughs and things like that. Making a podcast would be rather different.
Okay, Nellie has put a couple of interesting links in the Hangout chat. One of them was to Make Waves. Let's see if I can find it here. Makewaves.es. And that was in regard to badges, I think. Nellie, you can join us in the text chat if you're not going to wake anybody up where you are. Okay, so anyway, Jim says he brings this up because it can be an issue, a student not wanting to be public because of concerns that someone could be judging them on quality of their learning. So I guess you addressed that one.
Yeah, and I am keen for students to create e-portfolios, but what I find is it's only the keenest students who actually do that. I'm not allowed to use that as criteria for evaluation. I can only evaluate students speaking and writing, not how many posts they've made on a blog or anything like that.
Okay, if anybody in the Hangout would like to unmute their mic and ask questions, you're more than welcome to do that. I guess we do have, what do we have to be out of here in about 10 minutes, something like that?
Well, yeah, 10 minutes, quarter of an hour,
okay.
We'd have to be out, yeah.
Yeah, so we're in a classroom at the British Council. Let me show it to you while we're, this is, we have a street audience out there. There's people down there all crowding the balconies, and we have Bobby who is doing the panning on the iPad. There she is. And Chris and I are sitting here in one of the classrooms. And
in the very classroom in which I teach.
There you are.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where it all takes place.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we're moving between Chatwing, as I say, Chatwing chat is easy to preserve. What I can do with the Hangout chat is I can make a screenshot. That's what I've started doing. Otherwise, I can't even copy and paste the links anywhere. But what I do is when someone posts to the Hangout chat, I'll click on the link and open it in the browser, and then I'll get it from the browser later and put it in put it in the show notes. Okay. So, all right. Appreciate everybody's coming. We have somebody else who I don't recognize here. Let's see. This is oh, that's me. Where's that? That's me.
Yeah,
it must be Bobby somehow. We've lost your micro. We've lost your web. Oh, there you are. Okay, you got it back. Okay. Okay. Anyway, if there are, oh, Nellie mentioned move notes. I guess Nellie is not. If you want to speak to us, Nellie, feel free. I've not known you to be reticent. Or Rita, any comments? Or Maria is still here. Sabrina. Any more comments? You're welcome to make them.
Sorry about being silent. I'm just enjoying listening to you guys.
Great.
And once you know me, once I start talking, I don't stop. So I thought it'd be better if I stayed quiet. I really enjoyed.
Just stay quiet. You keep posting.
No, yeah, right. But that's what I do. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I enjoyed your talk, Chris. Yeah, I enjoyed your talk, Chris. Thank you, because I'm going to be giving a course that kind of follows the British Council, so this is very relevant on pronunciation, improving English teachers. I guess it's teacher training, helping them improve their pronunciation. So might want to get in touch with you for consultation.
Yes. Please do. Please do.
Yeah. So, thank you.
Sabrina, you mentioned we share a lot of stories about our lives and don't want these public. I often tell stories about my life and record them, and encourage students to do exactly the same. So if I'm asking them to talk about an interesting relative, then I talk about an interesting relative of mine for a similar length of time. And I always record it on iPadio, and I have a separate channel for each of my levels. Edmodo, because you can add RSS feeds to Edmodo groups. And I encourage my students to be as frank as I am in their personal stories. There are some things I'm not going to talk about, and I expect there are lots of things they're not going to talk about. So a day you were really frightened, well, I think that's okay.
Chris, hi. Greetings from Argentina. Here, my name is Maria Coluz. We've been in touch in Edmodo. Thank you very much for this presentation. I've also taught with some of your books here in Argentina when I began teaching, and this is amazing for me. My question would be, how long would you suggest the recordings to be? I don't have a lot of students, so I can afford the luxury of time, of taking my time to correct them, but what is the length that you would suggest for our recordings and for our students' recording?
My feeling is that it depends on the level, that you're lucky at pre-intermediate to get more than 2 minutes. Yeah, it's more likely to be 1 minute something. Once they're at intermediate, they can sometimes, you know, keep talking for 3 minutes, a little bit more, particularly as the stories my students are telling are not so much personal stories, they're retelling stories. So the content is not something they've got to work on, it's only how to express it. But I think 2 or 3 minutes gives you so much material if you're wanting to tease out where their problems are. I've given private classes in the old days when we used cassette recorders, and I did this every day with my private student. We'd record a conversation, then we'd go back through it right there and then in the class and say, oh, but look here, you made this mistake, here, your pronunciation. Yeah. Obviously, if you're an elementary student, speaking for a minute is a mountain to climb. I've never tried this sort of thing with elementary students. We just don't have very many elementary students here in Barcelona nowadays.
Yeah, I think when we do evaluations of our students, so we do evaluate their speaking, we generally try to get them, we tell them to talk for 2 minutes.
2 minutes,
and
yeah.
Our goal is to get them to talk for a minute. And then, like you said, once you've heard a minute, you can pretty much see what the discourse is like.
Yeah. No, I think 1 minute as a evaluator is all you need. Sometimes less.
Yeah. Nellie asked, does pointing students to their mistakes help them improve? Do you have evidence of that?
I wish I had the time to study it. I've got so many hours of recordings. I thought it would be nice to trawl through them and make a note of how many times students self-corrected, because I think being able to self-correct while you're speaking is sort of the beginning of the journey to mastering something. But it's just I haven't got the time to do that sort of thing. Maybe if someone wants to do a master's on that, they could use all this. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, PhD student, that would be it. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
With Carla, I would say that her problem with pronunciation of the letter R still exists today after the end of their course. And I'd drawn her attention to it many times, but I haven't succeeded in getting her to understand when you pronounce the letter at all, and perhaps how to pronounce it more in an English way than a Spanish way. But on the other hand, her speaking is fantastic. She's very fluent, very communicative. So a couple of problems with pronunciation, and not the end of the world.
No, Henry Kissinger did just fine as Secretary of State, whatever he was.
Yeah.
With a slight accent.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Any last comments? Rita, we haven't heard from you in a while. Any last remarks before we all go? Sabrina?
Well, thank you very much, Chris, for sharing your experience. I do agree with you in that sometimes correcting students doesn't make, any much difference because they will need a lot of time to, try to improve their pronunciation, and maybe if that doesn't impair communication, then it's not worth. Just making such an effort to improve pronunciation, right? Anyway, I find that in Argentina we have the same problems, right? In Spain and Argentina as regards sounds and intonation patterns, which students sometimes find it very difficult to maybe improve. But yes, I do believe that we teachers put too much stress here in Argentina to the fact that English pronunciation should be perfect, and sometimes we inhibit our students when we really put so much emphasis on that, and so they just trying to make it better. Sometimes we impair their own production because they are too much conscious of the mistakes they are making, which are not that terrible.
Yes, you want them to be self-conscious in the sense that they can listen to themselves, but you don't want to make them self-conscious in the sense that they become unable to express themselves because they're so anxious about it all.
Exactly.
It's true. For instance, I have one student who keeps on he every time he makes a mistake, he says sorry, and I says, I'm not a prisoner. I don't have to forgive you for anything. Please don't ask me to forgive you every time you make a mistake. Just keep talking. Yeah. But it's like, once they are in front of you and they know that you know a little bit of English because you're a teacher, they immediately start to put themselves at the defensive, or I don't know how to say, but she knows, and that's not what we want. But, well.
I think the atmosphere in the class is very important.
Exactly.
Trying to put the right atmosphere in the class from the very first day. So you want them to be ambitious, to try to do something which they're surprised that they are able to do, but you want them to feel relaxed about the fact that they're trying to do this. And I think that's a very important part of the first few classes of any course.
Especially with adults, they are so they feel so threatened when they make mistakes. It's a very deep level. It affects them, and once as soon as I can, I try to put them in front of someone, a friend or a native speaker, who immediately says, "Oh, your English is very good," and that's when their self-confidence, takes off. But it's not enough for your teacher to tell them that they are good. They need this sort of validation to compensate. That's what I think. I don't know.
I think they can get it from other members of the class. I was very impressed by my students saying that one of the reasons that they made so much progress was because the other students in the class were so good. And I think that's sort of, and both ends were saying it. The one who thought he wasn't as good as the others, and the other people that he was admiring would all say it. It's sort of, we just regard ourselves as people who are communicative in English. We're good at it, and they enjoy it.
I took a course in French pronunciation once as part of my studies in about French, and I thought really two things. One, they did a lot of phonetic alphabet transcription, so you could see in phonetic alphabet what you were doing in pronunciation, and we also had to record poetry. For example, les sanglots longs des violons blessent mon cœur d'une langue monotone. So to try to get this correct. So it made me very aware of pronunciation issues that I probably wouldn't have had without some systematic approach.
Well, I want to add that in Argentina, I'm just insisting on the fact that we teachers should expose our students to a true and meaningful communication with native speakers or non-native speakers, but students who could have this synchronous contact with our students, for example, using Skype, so that Argentinian students get a true idea of how well they can communicate with other native speakers or speakers of English in different countries. So there it is when they get conscious of the importance of having learned English, but at the same time how well they can communicate, and they can really improve their own communication if they feel that they cannot communicate. But if they realize that this communication has been successful, then it's quite a good feeling of satisfaction, right?
Yeah, I think my students commented on the way in which their speaking had got better. They say, I'm so self-confident now. I don't feel anything could stop me. I can just speak, and it's true. They may make mistakes, but they really became very good at communicating, and they realized this, and I think it gave them satisfaction.
Yeah, I don't know. Are you concerned about the teacher who just walked in and wants to use the classroom?
I think it's a student who's just sitting, but I think we probably should start packing up to give the teacher a chance to.
There'll be a class here in another 10 minutes. So, okay, well, thank you. And Michael, we didn't hear from you because you were just in the text chat. Michael Coughlin, we know him, one of our favorite people.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, all of you who came. And of course, this is being recorded, and you can carry on the conversation in the chat wing, chatwing.com/VANCESTV. And also, Google Hangout event page is a good place to leave comments. Often conversations continue there. So nice to have Chris here. Thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah.
Certainly appreciate
it.
Thank you very much for
inviting me. That was great.
Yes, okay. Yeah, it was great. So it's great thing to do while in Barcelona, in the hot part of the day, to come indoors and use the air conditioning to do Hangouts. Okay, well, thanks very much. This is Learning Together, 13th of July, talking with Chris Fry here in the British Council Amigó Centre in Barcelona, where I happen to be for a conference, and just came from Sabrina's place in Eportfolio. She's the one with the chalkboard there. So thanks everyone else, Maria, Nelly, Rita, thank you for coming, and we'll see you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'll make screenshots of the Hangout chat and try to put, we'll put as many links as possible in the show notes, so we'll get all that together, Chris and I will do in the next couple of days. So anyway, thanks again, and bye everybody.
Bye.
Yeah, you can turn that off. Oh, let me stop the broadcast. Okay. Broadcast.